on such an amazing topic. So Johnathan is going to teach us how he's built his business on farming and the consistency and the work that it's taken to do. This is an extremely popular topic because I think at any point in time throughout an agent's career, they're always, or at some point, thinking about if they should start farming or sending a newsletter, or at least poking around and trying to get the general aspect of what farming is and what it might take and the success with that. So Johnathan's going to walk us through exactly how he's built it over the last 10 years. And really get kind of into the nitty gritty. So there's going to be a lot of just overall themes and philosophies on it. And then also getting in and digging into the MLS to really find out what makes sense to pursue a different farming market.
So those of you who do and don't know me, I've been licensed since 2011. I was licensed at 21. So at that point in time, I had a couple of family members that maybe would think about buying and selling, but my friends weren't doing anything and I had absolutely no basis to get started. So I turned to farming. Farming in 2011, I got so many looks like, what the heck are you doing? It was insanity because nobody really was doing it at the time. So I was originally at CBS Home out of the Pacific Street office, and I worked with like our CBS Homes marketing team at the time to kind of come up with something that was a viable option to start sending out. It's evolved immensely since, based on not only feedback from clients, but also what we notice works and doesn't work. So geographical farming obviously is focusing on one market area. You can do that a couple different ways. I started originally by neighborhood. That got tiring. It started to wear out just because of the volume that we started to send. So now we do every door direct mail. Is everybody familiar with EDDMs? They're a lot easier to work with, and they're a little easier for the overall person to just look at. I started in 2011 with mailers that were like this in the mail. When they got it, they'd open it up, it'd have market stats. And as you would get in it, it would be strictly all about their neighborhood. So this was Walnut Creek Hills at the time. So this one's about 2.5 years old. It was one of our last ones that we sent out. So these are great because you can really get content driven, very hyper local, and I think they're pretty. They're good to look at, but they're harder to. For most people, open up. They see them as junk primarily. So you're going to get less capture. I found that we got less capture out of these than when we transitioned to EDDMs. One of the big things that is important when you're looking at overall EDDMs is the look, the feel, the content. I think a lot of people go wrong with EDDMs or direct mail farming when they make the farming about themselves. Farming should not be about you as the agent at all. It should be about their market area, their neighborhood, and what they really care about. I'm going to pass around 2 different versions of our EDDMs. These are mailed. We're going to take one to this room and pass it back. And then I'd like for you to change sides with these because they are a little bit different overall. For sure. Yeah, and obviously, I don't mean to be, difficult with this, but these are my personal marketing pieces. If you'd like to dive into them, maybe more one-on-one with some of the content, I'm more than happy to do that. But I would like if nobody really took photos or copied them from this presentation overall as well. So, consistency is one of the biggest things Leslie mentioned earlier. EDDMs have to be very consistent. Anne does all of the designing of them, and she does all of the mailing of them as well. But they are sent the same week, every month, every single month, regardless of what's going on in the marketplace. We want to make sure that the look is pretty much identical, so they start seeing brand recognition as well. But it has to be very, very consistent. You can't do a quarterly EDDM and expect to see results. In fact, you can't do EDDMs for 6 months and expect to see results. A lot of these farm areas that I've been farming for almost 10 years, and I've seen consistent repeat business from them in those areas because they start to see your name, they start to see your signs, and they get a feel for ultimately what you're doing. I've had not only this year, I'm gonna talk about some of the numbers, but I had 5 repeat farming clients this year. So I'm on my second or third transaction that started with a farming piece. And I've had people call me and say, hey, I don't know if you're willing or looking for buyers, but I have a grandson or a niece or a nephew that's looking to buy a house. Can I give them your information? So these pieces may not affect you directly in a necessarily market area or a neighborhood, but if you can keep them consistent and keep them valuable, then you start to see a result from them. This is what we do for mailings. So we try not to change our neighborhoods very often. If we decide to pick up a neighborhood, I'm gonna run through like how to pick one and how to make it worth it, I guess, for your time essentially. But we send 5,458 mailers a month to the city of Papillion, the area of Papillion, I guess. West Darby County, so that gray area between, Papillion and Gretna, we send 1431, and the city of Gretna we hit with over 4,000 every month. It's a total of about 11,000 people or 11,000 homes, and these are the neighborhoods that I farm. Most of these neighborhoods, Tiburon, Shadow Lake, Glenwood Hills. Glenwood Hills is my oldest running one, and I actually used to live in there, so it has a little bit of sentimental value, I guess. But that one I've been farming for 11 years. I've seen years in there where I've had 15 plus listings. 2022 I had 0, but I didn't give up on it, and I expect that we'll start to see more of a pickup. I mean, it goes in waves, it really does in all the areas. Shadow Lake, there's been years that I've had 14 active lists, literally 14 active listings at one given time in that neighborhood, just from my farming. Last year, we had 2 listings in there. It really takes a long-term commitment versus I'm not seeing results over the 6-month period, I'm just gonna trash it. So you have to be really committed to really doing it, otherwise it's not gonna make a difference for you at all.
Can I ask about your design?
Yes.
So how have you evolved over the last 10 years? Plus, how did you start with your design? How did you evolve it? How did you determine when it needed to be evolved? Yep. Without losing that recognizable pieces, especially going from the folded
right
to then the EDDM?
That folded to the EDDM was a tough transition. It was really nice because it's way less time, a lot less labor. And how many hours did you spend on that?
On the old printer, 18 hours. Oh, but now I
just printing them.
Yes, just printing.
And then we fold them.
A new setting where I can do it in 7 to 8.
So, that was the evolution. It was really out of need because we needed to be able to produce more.
Can I be rude
for
1 second? Can you scream at us old people?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I can do that. So looking at like the need to, or I guess the want to do more areas, that's when we transitioned from, and I guess I can pass some of these out too, from these guys that are all folded to something that's a little bit more clean lined and overall streamlined, I guess. I'm gonna pass some of these around, that'd be great. I guess that was a little difficult because we did see a lull in all of our neighborhoods when we transitioned from the folded to the EDDMs. Because again, people get used to it, they know it, they see it, so if they care about it, they're gonna open it. I can go to CMAs that I'll have a client that I'm sitting down with, they're always interviewing other agents, always. This is just what it is, because they don't know me. But they'll have a stack of those sitting on their counter. They'll have 12, 14 months worth, and they'll sit there with me and they'll open them up and they'll be like, well, this house looks like it might be like mine, or this one might look like mine. And then I have to kind of dissect it from there too. But they value the data that's in it, so they actually save them and hold on to them. Because again, it's not about me, it's about, you can see on here, I have my stuff here. So this is one that goes to Tiburon, Palisades, and Aspen Creek. So it has these, we come up with these directly from the MLS. It's sold listings from the last 30 days. So it gives them that's a good chunk of space devoted to that. But I think it's what most people actually really care about is what's just a quick tidbit broken down, and they can actually, like, as a common person, understand. We used to use, which if you get hands on one of these, we used to use Trend Graphics, which I think also has great data, but it's a little harder for most people to break down. They look at these numbers and they're like, well, what does it actually mean? So then we just transitioned to this last year, So it's a little easier. Now, I take the farming, I guess, maybe a little bit, one more step. This links back to my website. So if you scan this, it's gonna take you to an automated home value generator that actually captures the data, of course, and sends it back to me. It captures their data if they put in, as soon as they start. So the first step is putting in your address. I get the first email that says this address, filled it out. If that next page, they don't want to give contact information, it doesn't let them go any farther. But then I at least have an address. So then I will break it down to this. So then we send these every month for the next 3 months, reminding them that we're here to give them their value. I will give them a very broad range as far as the value goes on that. So to encourage them, and then I'll generally write a little note, like depending on condition or something like that. So that way they can actually, they know that there's a lot of variables that go into it, and hopefully we'll eventually reach out. I've had 2 people come back to me on this. One was a $1.1 million sale that is going on the market in about 2 months. So the follow-up on a lot of this too, if you can manage it, not everybody can manage the second part of it. I mean, that's a little more in depth. I'm gonna go back to this one, sorry. It's a little bit more in depth than some people want to take it, but I found that that's something, again, we just added when we switched to the EDDMs, and it's helped the capture quite a bit. Another thing, the major difference where if you're trying to decide like what kind of EDDM is right for you, I think this is still a great option. This allows you to be more hyper local. It allows you to just focus on one neighborhood. EDDMs are a little bit different because they go to a mail route. The mail route has to be catered to several different areas. So you have to keep this data in all your areas. And then every month we pick a few of the houses that have sold to feature on here. Now, here's the backbreaking, more tedious part of this is because of MLS policy, you have to get permission for these photos. So you have to call that listing agent and make sure that they're okay with it. You'll notice on one of them that's going around, it says Gretna on the top. There's a big listing on there. That one is generally my listing if I have an acreage in Gretna. But if it's not, I'm calling, like we just put one, like Karen Jennings just had one that we put on there. I had to call her and ask her. And generally, if you explain to the agent, like this is going to 4,000 homes, they're like, go for it, And you'll note it on there, if it's not mine, even if it is on, I think on that one, it is mine. But I will put listing courtesy of Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate, and then I put the agent on there. So there has to be a little bit of tie back with that. But again, you're the one providing the data. So 9 times out of 10, they're focusing on this and not, oh, it's not on here, but not the little verbiage that's below it.
Can I interject just one little segue, because I'm always a stickler for rules and advertising and keeping everybody out of real estate jail. This farming is probably your biggest susceptibility to be turned into the real estate commission for an advertising violation, mostly because the people that are turning you in live in that neighborhood. So they're gonna nitpick this. So if you ever have a question on if something is okay, or you think it's in the middle, give me a call and we can go through it. Cause that is probably our biggest, where we get it from, is the.
Now, what if you don't put pictures of the house? Can I still use the data without having to get their approval? So it's just when you're using the picture. Okay.
Well, the picture mostly because it's
Intellectual property,
Yeah.
Okay, but like I've done mailers where I've listed the data, like how many houses sold and.
public
Like here's
data.
what it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you guys are just, quick question, you're not using specifically your listings.
If
You're-
we can, we are.
If you can, but
Yes.
otherwise you're just gathering
Correct.
what's in it.
Yep, and
Okay,
this is the most important. I mean, this is what they want to see, like Palisades, and we go back 30 days. Sometimes if there's not enough data, which sometimes, with the market we're in, some neighborhoods just aren't seeing turnover, right? So sometimes we'll go back 60 days, but we'll notate it on there. And then we also always put listings as of the date that it was created, so that somebody can't call and be like, well, this one sold 3 weeks ago. I'm like, well, you haven't checked your mail in 4 months. So, but I think this is the most important data is just what's going on in the neighborhood. Now, the other problem with EDMs is you're going to overlap other areas that are not on your target, I guess. So in Gretna, there's a lot of small little pocket neighborhoods in Old Town Gretna. So we try and rotate out, the houses in each development every month. So like you're seeing a rotation of them. And then if it's not if their neighborhood isn't necessarily noted on here, we put on there like this one doesn't, this overlaps some of the rural parts out in Gretna. So we just put all Sarpy County neighborhoods because it's generic. But on the ones that we know what neighborhoods it's going to, we will specifically list their neighborhood so that they see like an attachment to it. You know, they can relate a little bit more to it, even though maybe their neighborhood's not featured that month. Right now.
Just disclosures too.
Oh, yeah.
Making sure that there's.
Yeah, the disclosures are all on there, if you'll note. It's gonna be hard to see on here because it's a screenshot, but you can actually read this on the mailer. It's the full kit and caboodle from, it's from Greenhouse. So that whole disclosure needs to be on everything, not just if you were currently listed with the broker. You need to make sure that you have fair housing on here and MLS, which is on here. And then the two most important parts. This is how the post office actually verifies the postage and sends it out. I'll show you guys here, how I kind of pick a neighborhood, I guess. So when you're looking at a neighborhood, you want to make sure that this is a year. I went a little excessive on this, but you want to make sure that there's at least 10 transactions in a 6-month period. Otherwise, you're wasting your time. Now, that might be a little difficult with the market conditions that we're seeing right now. You may know that a neighborhood turns over, generally speaking, but it's not had very many transactions in the last 6 months. That might actually be a neighborhood to start peppering because there could be more people that are ready to go that have put it on the back burner, right? So I'll go through a neighborhood. This is Tiburon. This is one that we farm. So I'll go through each listing the last 6 months and see how many repeats there are. So if it's a neighborhood that has some new construction, Tiburon does have new construction, so I've excluded that. But I'll go through and I'll say, okay, how many listings repeat with the same agent? And if you're looking at this, like there's 24 sales in here. Okay. And there really, you can start looking at it, there really is not a ton of repeat unless you see mine in here. But there still is some repeat. You know, I know that Jen Haig had 2 listings in Tiburon there as well. So you've just got to be very cognizant of what's going on in there, because the last thing you want to do is repeat a neighborhood that somebody else is actually truly farming. The other thing I've kind of looked at is a little bit price point driven, because this isn't cheap. You know, selling or sending these, you can spend $400 for one mail route. Like, you know, it's not just something that you want to throw away. So we try and keep our neighborhoods, generally speaking, about 300,000 and above, because that's where we also see just the most return on investment. Getting back to a little bit on content, any questions on how to select a neighborhood? Let's just.
I have a question for Leslie on that. I know a few years ago when we had something on farming, there was going to be some database to make sure that agents within the same company weren't farming other, like, I'm not gonna go farm where Jonathan's at. What's the point? He's gonna, you know, and that's just looks bad for 2 of the same company. Do we have that yet?
We have had it in the past, but we've found that sometimes it gets outdated.
Okay.
So we like to circle back, and we can actually do this through the MLS and pull neighborhoods where we see specific high traffic and we can go individually as well. So if there's certain neighborhoods that you want to look at, I'm happy to sit down and we can pop through the MLS. And we can also reach out, because there's also, you know, we know the big farmers in town, you know, that hit different places, not only with us, but other brokerages too. So absolutely happy to sift through some of that data. Also on a little sidebar, Eden is getting her master's in data analytics. And so I am going to be picking her brain on creating a heat map based on number of sales, basically broken down by agent, and then identifying different subdivisions based on what the data is saying that there could be potential for the next round. So Eden's gonna have fun with me.
Leslie, that would be backtrack just a second of it. I would love to know what like not who's farming what, but like what neighborhoods are out there that need to be farmed.
Yes.
I mean, I get it. Like if there's a Berkshire and I think that are heavily farming Willowwood, not to talk about that, but I think it'd be good, especially with some of the newer agents wanting to go into farming. Because there's some neighborhoods out there that I know are not.
Absolutely.
There are a lot of people, I hate to say this, a lot of people, and Jonathan, most people don't do this to them. Like, I'm a firm believer in I'll tell you what I'm doing, but you're not gonna do it.
Right.
Most people want to do something, and like you said earlier, send out that, 2 or 3 months, or then like, oh, I'm not getting anything that's been working. Well, that's not how it works.
That's where that data analytics is going to come in. So if Eden can extract data based on what we're essentially giving her, she can find those data markers that have indicated a hot market in a subdivision. So then that could be a predictable for what the next neighborhoods, because it could be age, could be turnover, could be
But I feel like a lot of
demographics.
people too gravitate when they want to farm, they want to go to the higher end subdivision, and they forget about those kind of mid-range people. They're like, those are their first homes.
Mhm.
Those can be super popular.
Yeah,
You're gonna see a lot longer marketing periods, these people in those higher ranges, because there's gonna be less turnover. And honestly speaking, if you're looking at a $600,000-700,000 range plus, they probably have a relationship with somebody.
Yeah.
But there's also situations where I walk in on farming, they want a second opinion, so they're getting my stuff, they're calling, their cousin to come in and I beat them. Because you come in with the data that's pretty driven, and that other person that's a family member or relative, I hope none of us do this, but they just expect it. So they don't come with a full presentation, and they don't come with, polished and ready to go,
Show them what you're worth is what.
Exactly.
As a best friend, just assume.
Well, and you've been very quietly in the back of their minds, proving your worth for however long you've been farming their area. The thing is, you have to have, I would say, a minimum a year-long commitment to every area you want to farm. Because you're not gonna see those results. Again, you're not gonna see those results in 6 months. You may see them in 8 months. Like Tiburon, for instance, we had 6 listings in there in the last year, all for farming. But there's been years, like 2 or 3 years, that we've talked about getting rid of it. Because I'm like, I'm not seeing results from it. But then it just pops. And then once you get your first listing, you need to build on traction from that. Just listed, just sold. Like it needs to be something that, you're using each listing, not only because, great, you finally scored a listing in there, but you're going to use it for the next piece of marketing that's also going to be in their mailbox. So the other thing on here, again, there's nothing braggy on any of my marketing. We'll do braggy marketing. I have one that I'm going to show you that I've done in the past that is just about me. We'll do those maybe every other quarter, just as a supplemental piece to get in their mailbox and remind them. But we don't do it in place of an EDDM. So those months, they'll get 2 things from me. The stuff that, I'm not getting something from my dentist that says how many root canals they did last year. I'm just not. That's a line from Aubrey that I totally stole it. But I'm just not. And honestly, I don't think the general public cares how many houses we sold last year. They care what we're doing in our career and what our lifetime, kind of overall approach is. And I found that to be very prevalent. And even in my listing presentations, it's not something, I have one slide where I talk about me. Everything else in the listing presentation is about them and what I'm going to do for them. So I think that's the same mentality you need to have with your marketing. So.
I applaud that. Yeah. I didn't so much of that, but we don't. So who cares what you sold? They really don't.
Like, Jonathan, how do you leverage reviews from all of this?
What do you mean?
Like getting reviews
Yeah.
from all your transactions?
So this is one of my braggy posts or braggy mailers. Says, can your realtor say this? And I just put some of my stats and then what I do for a listing. And then I have a couple of listings that we sold, and this will be catered to their area as well. So their EDDM area, these are houses that I sold in their area with the stats, and then a review on here. But again, it keeps the same look as everything else I'm sending. So they're seeing consistency in everything. My listing presentation is all black and white and runs with the same look. Every single thing that their house flyers match this. Everything needs to be totally buttoned up and put together in the same presentation so that you, in my opinion, you look like you know what you're doing.
Now, Jonathan, I'm sorry, is that a mailing or is it an EDD?
This is an EDM. So.
And is that in addition to?
This is an addition.
So that.
Yep. And so we will also do smaller postcards too in addition. Our goal is to not only make sure that we have something to them every single month in the form of that the regular EDDM that got passed around, but also in a supplementary every quarter. So technically each area is getting 16 pieces of mail from me. And that's not talking about just listed and just solds for their area as well. So they could end up with 20 some mail pieces from me every single year. You're just peppering them and keep reminding them that you're there and you're ready to help them with their move.
Okay, but like in the meantime, until you have 9 houses in that area,
Mhm.
so I mean, what? You
Those are-
always have 9 houses.
Yeah, so just pick something from a different area. I mean, it doesn't necessarily, I mean, they're not gonna go through every address per se, but if you make a couple of them about them, I think that's valuable enough. Cause there are neighborhoods, like, there are neighborhoods that we will have several comps that we've sold, or, you know, you go back a year, then who cares? You sold a house there a year ago, you're still relevant, you know, a year, 18 months, 2 years. As long as the pricing is within what is normal now, and your days on market are not crazy. Cause I like to put that stuff on there so they can see, cause in my listing presentation, you know, I think we should all talk about that. I hope everybody does. In your listing presentation, you talk about what your average days on market is, what your average sale price is, you know, all those things so that you look like an educated individual, not only about yourself, but also the market that you know, their marketplace overall. Give you insight into my farming. So I send 10,000 pieces a month. This is what, after 10 years, what I see for successes on farming. So I had 15 listings in 2022 directly from farming. Now, not every single one of those listings originated in the neighborhood that I was farming. And what I mean by that is, like, I had some repeat customers who started from farming and now have sold several times, right? So my high was 1,395. That guy interviewed no other agents. He hired me on the spot at a 6% commission. No questions. It was one of the best listing presentations I have all year long. But he knew that he lived on an acreage. He could relate because I lived on an acreage. I live on an acreage out there. And my marketing material, again, catered to what was going on in the neighborhood. So he brought up several of them. He had a stack of them. And he asked me specifically, were these my sales? I could say yes and no to some of them, you know, but that didn't deter him because, again, I was providing the information to him. So my average sale price from farming was $579,866. My total volume on the sales side was 8.8 million. I had 6 buyers. Those buyers either started as a sale on the sale side, or it was somebody that referred in from farming, or a repeat client from farming. So my high was 750, my low was 321, average sale price of 475. Total volume 2.835. So what that equated me in 2022, as far as my investment goes, my listing side commissions were 313, my buy side commissions were 68. Total commissions from farming was 381,168. If I look at what I spent on farming, I spent $14,000 on postage. I spent nothing on printing costs. Thank you to the company for that. I spent $4,000 on cardstock. Now, I will point this out. This is one of the caveats of going from, you know, when I was doing the 11x17, because the company provided that, to the cardstock. Cardstock is expensive, and I buy it through the company, but that goes on my agent statement. It's a bill. So
Your postage was higher when you did the folded, wasn't it?
my postage was higher. So when we broke that down, how did it work out?
The 11x17 were like 20,000 a year.
Yeah, I was closer to that 20,000. I think one year I was upwards of 24,000 a year on
And that's sending out about 11,000.
11,000. Yeah. So now, I need to rescind this a little bit. I forgot December's on here when I was going through the school service website. So add another $800 for December. Now, but with EDDMs, you can cover a lot more people for less money than you can with an actual addressed mailing. You also don't have to worry about going through the assessor to find addresses and updating them every month. And unless you have like a perfect Excel spreadsheet, which we ended up having because of the formatting of everything, it takes you forever to do that. So you are going to spend maybe a little bit more time. Actually, it's probably about the same amount of time printing, right?
Printing, yes.
Same amount of time printing, but the design and the data that you have to get just to get it to them for like addresses is far reduced overall. And then we have labor of about 15 hours per month. So, and that 15 hours is using that template, modifying it. It takes Ann about 30 minutes or so for each one of our neighborhoods. So in total for all of our neighborhoods, because we have a system down, and then just the print time overall. So, and Ann is very kind and gracious, and she generally comes on the weekends if she doesn't hog the printer from everybody.
Very nice, very nice.
So if I look at the return on investment from farming, if you can execute it at a high level and you can actually find a system. There's no other place, I mean, I don't know of any other place you can ever run something like that. And thank you for Tom for calculating that, because I couldn't figure it out for life.
I just want the 381,000.
Okay, perfect. Yep.
Right?
How many people are familiar with the EDDM website and how it works? Does anybody have a value for me to show you kind of how you pick a route and whatnot? Yes, no?
He said, do you want to?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll show you real quick. All right, so it's just eddm.usps.com. Pick an address in your pick an address in your overall market area that you want to mail to, and then it's going to give you a map. This map will allow you to maybe not select different routes as you go across. It's going to show you the average income level in that area, the actual cost, and I guess age range, and then the total. Now, one of the big things on here that we do take off is we will take off the businesses. So you can go, and how do we do that?
Residential.
The second tab.
Oh, so you can click residential route only, because I mean, it's not a whole lot. It's going to take off probably on our scale, it probably takes off 200 or 300, which saves us a little bit, but you don't need to be sending to that. So you can pick each area and it'll, it just adds everything up. Now, the one other benefit to doing it all online here and making sure you're paying online, you can pay at the post office, but if you pay it online, a lot of the post office, you can just set it down and leave. You don't have to wait in the crazy long lines too. So this is a pretty easy software to navigate. Now, if you're looking at like a new construction area, so a lot of the stuff we farm in Papillion, our farming numbers grow every single month because the routes are getting bigger with completed areas. So you'll have to be cognizant of that. If you pick an area that's growing, you're going to have to budget for that, because every month it's going to get a little more expensive, and you're going to have a few more prints and all that stuff. But you can also kind of gauge, what your overall budget may be if you kind of peruse through here and decide what you want to do. Again, the biggest thing is just making sure that, if you're hitting a route that's hitting multiple neighborhoods and you want results from those routes, you need to be mentioning everything on that. It needs to be, again, just about them.
We mentioned for some people who don't know, that especially in the older neighborhoods.
Yep.
We'll actually break down the carrier route.
Yep.
Because we don't really have subdivisions in Midtown. So I'll break down carrier route to grab.
Grab the areas. That's what
You
you
can still call it, you can still say,
More
country club, what's country club?
Yeah, you can call it Evanston, I love that.
Right.
New listing in the famous Evanston little
Yeah.
neighborhood. I'm like, that would even go Evanston.
So,
But the carrier route we can break down further, so for people who don't live in, a specified subdivision. Or if you just need to pick up a few on the other side of the pond.
so I guess when we do that, I'm selecting a whole nother total carrier route. I guess I don't understand.
Well, the carrier routes might be bigger out west, I'm guessing, because they drive them.
Yeah,
Like, we actually have, so in our neighborhood, I can pick it up by carrier route, to the
Okay.
point where our mailman Mike, I can pick up all of his route,
Okay.
plus his brother John on North of Dodge, I can pick up just those routes.
so I don't think,
So I don't pick up a whole zip code, I just pick up those.
yeah, so that's what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
Cause
So
that's,
those are bigger out west. then?
yeah, these are, this is
Okay.
one route.
Clusters.
Oh,
so-
yeah, okay. Ours are much
Like,
smaller.
this is one big route here, so, and that's kind of,
So in the older neighborhoods, they're much smaller.
Much smaller, yeah. Yeah, they're pretty large here.
Yeah, we just pick up, it's like 10 blocks.
Yeah.
10 blocks.
So then the other thing about this is if you're doing an area like this, this is all we call acreage. And then you get into some of these other neighborhoods. So again, each neighborhood has to be
That's real nice.
included on that mailing itself.
So, you're almost
Everything I do.
So
Yep.
the area that I focus on is right up against the border on Circuit County,
Yep.
Cinnamon Creek, Mission, I have to go all the way to the downtown post office. Do you have to go there?
No, EDDMs don't go to the downtown post office. EDDMs go to the local post office. So when you're,
Oh, no, I mean, the Miller.
Yeah.
Okay, so Because right now I'm not doing it as EDM. Okay, that's another good.
So,
reason to do it. And I know
Yeah,
that-
EDDM goes to the local post office, and generally speaking, EDDMs will get delivered the next day too. And I like EDDMs because, you know, you get all your mail wrapped up inside it.
Yeah.
So it's the first thing that they're seeing. I mean, you get mine in the mail, you know, isn't it generally like wrapped up in everything?
Fold it in half.
Yeah. And then all your
It's
other
not
mail with
really-
them
It's not usually wrapped in,
Okay.
it's just stuck in.
stuck in there. Yeah. So like when my mailman delivers, it's probably because we get way too much shit, but it's always in a rubber band and this is always around it. So, I mean, it's obviously something that I know this because I'm watching for it, but I feel like, you know, it's a bigger piece of mail. You can EDDM smaller pieces of mail too.
You get it the next day generally though?
I generally get my minutes.
Because I get so frustrated with that bulk mail
Yeah.
stamp,
So
not knowing when they're gonna get it.
that's the other thing is I've had sometimes where they go missing. They've gone MIA.
Okay.
And so most of my mail routes, I have a past client on, a friend on, something like that. So for a while there, I was checking with them because we were calling our past clients and saying, hey, did you get my mail piece yesterday? Or if you get it today, can you let me know? Because I had to go to some of the post offices. I said, where are my mailings? So that is an issue we've experienced in the past. Thankfully, it's been a long time since we experienced that. And the Gretna postmaster actually called me directly on mine. I was like, I dropped 4,000 pieces here yesterday or 2 days ago, and they're not delivered yet. He said, give it a couple more days and magically they appear at that point.
Yeah, they have a time frame that they have to get it out. Like, they don't have to get it the next day.
No, they don't.
It just goes in their bag. and
Yep.
If they have too much, like on Wednesday, they're.
It's
going
weight.
to the
Yeah.
Grocery weight, yeah. If they have too much to like give that day, they'll just push yours to the next day. That's
Correct.
Part of the benefit of EDDM is it's not first class.
Right. Well, and that's why it's a little bit cheaper too. They have more flexibility in doing it.
Yeah,
And
they do part today and part tomorrow.
yeah, and what the postmaster at Gretna told me was that it goes out by us, it goes by truck weight. So if the truck gets overloaded, that's the first thing that comes off. Yep.
And just a differentiator between the EDDM and the bulk mail, just in case, because there are definitely differences, especially in size and cost and what you can actually create that's unique to you. So the EDDM, they have the routes. You cannot change these. So you cannot pick any of your addresses. You can't pick your subdivision. It's routes. The bulk mail, and you can take it to any post office.
Yep.
Bulk mail has different restrictions on the size as well. And it has to have the stamp and it has to be taken to, I think is there just the one downtown? There might be.
Yes. You
Yeah.
can take it to Boys Town,
Yeah,
but they charge you more because then they're taking it downtown.
got it. So there are differences in that. And if you want to dig into what works best for you, then.
Then you gotta address the bulk mail too.
Yeah, the bulk mail has to be addressed.
Yeah.
And you have to have the bulk mail stamp on it.
And I think it's more expensive for post.
It's more expensive. Which is another reason, again, like, you know, you can't get as neighborhood specific with this as you can this. So there are benefits. If you're starting small and you're just gonna work, you know, one or two neighborhoods, I still think this is a really good idea, you know, doing something like this and which, you know, I can talk with anybody who wants to do something like this, but doing something that's a little bit more detailed and a little bit more specific to them is a good idea. If you're gonna start full scale and you're gonna pick 5 neighborhoods, this is gonna be more cost effective and probably overall, it's gonna suit you maybe a little bit better. So you really have to decide, you know, what your cup of tea is and what your goals are. How much effort and time do you really want to do this? And again, run your numbers, make sure you can afford to do it for a year, or you want to put the investment in for a year at least. And you also have to be okay with seeing that money go down the drain if you don't get anything, because it's happened. You know, Courtney, I've had neighborhoods, Courtney, we do all of her stuff into this. She's had areas, she's about to drop one of her neighborhoods that she has farmed for 3 years, and she saw really good success about it, but now she's decided that she wants to focus on her new neighborhood where she lives now, and she's gonna drop them, so.
She could have listing on that.
Yeah, she told me that, yeah, that's how it always happens. I think we talk about dropping them. So you can do these in different sizes. There's a guide on the EDDM.USPS website. I would not recommend it. I think this is the most impactful.
I will just add, we do one, you do. That if you take an 11 by 17 sheets and you cut it in thirds, it's a very big postcard.
Yep.
But it's an option if you're looking to save a little bit of money instead of, you know, one card per sheet. you get 3, but the 11 by 17 is a little bit more.
And it's still an odd size. That's the thing, if you want it. Oh, it might be.
I think there's.
Oh,
You know, look nicely.
we always just take it. We used to go to, office, we used to go to FedEx, Kinko's. They got really expensive this year, and so we went with it.
They make up right. They make up.
So that-
Anyone else before you return to the meeting? And then they called us, and then we were with somebody else, and they said, we put it about 10% off the lowest price. Like,
So, but that,
There we go.
so that, yeah, we went to Fifth, from places. Fifth had a really great price. And then I called back to FedEx and said, you know, we're not gonna go with you. And he said, oh, well, just so you know, for next year, we would have given you 10% off of any other bid you had. So, there you go.
So that's your alternative to not printing them
And
here in the
that's,
office.
yeah, but like we printed, we were printing 1,800 and it cost us 300 to get a print.
So it's not bad.
I got it. I know it's a big print. It's only 30 people in the box.
and about 350 in mail.
So that's how you post the same in the Johnathan.
Yeah.
EDDM,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, all EDDM is the same price.
Whether it's that price or, yeah,
We just like.
we just like the fact that we can get 3 on a sheet.
And I think it's, again, just making sure that your piece looks good, stands out, and has some consistency across the board. You know, like if you get one of mine in the mail, you're always gonna see these 3 black circles on the front, and it's gonna give you, and obviously my face on it, but it's gonna give you the same look every single month. We try our best not to change the structure of this. Sometimes you get things on the back where, you know, you're trying to organize homes that are sold and all that stuff. And so you do have to change the format a little bit, but I want somebody to be able to spend 35 seconds looking at this as they're standing above their trash can, remember me, and then throw it away, because that's what's gonna happen, you know? You'd be surprised. I get probably at least 15 to 20 scans every time we do one, which doesn't sound like a lot when you have 10,000 of them, but that's 15 to 20 leads that now I can start tagging, because they're at least thinking about it, right? And then if they send me, if they actually fill out the whole form and I get their email, I try and follow up within 15 or 20 minutes to that email that says, you know, I look at the value that the website gave them. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's terrible. And I'll tell them like that automated value was very close, but here's a more detailed, of course, this is based on me coming out and looking at your house. Is that something you want to do? Kind of ask for the appointment.
Are you using HomeBot or a different?
You can definitely use HomeBot. HomeBot's probably one of the easiest. Mine's integrated into my website, so it's a little different, but I think you'd probably have the most success, and HomeBot is very reasonable for pricing on that automated home value. And you know what? I think HomeBot probably makes like its own custom website and stuff for you too with that. I don't know, but it definitely be something to look into for something like that.
Because people don't understand EDDM, do you get calls that say, take me off your list, they don't get any links?
I got way more calls to take people off my list from the ones that were mailed to them, like directly with their names on it. I think people, when EDMs were first a thing, I would get calls every once in a while, like, I had one older gentleman that said, I'm gonna die here, so you don't need to save your postage, is basically what he told me. And I'm like, I appreciate that, but your name's not on it, it's not postmarked to you. So if you want off an EDM list, you need to go to your post office, and then I just let them deal with it, you know? But I get a lot less with an EDM than I do with an actual direct mail piece.
Do you do any direct mailings for your, like, past clients that's not in your route or neighborhood that you're farming? Do you send stuff to you after clients that aren't?
Yeah, so my past clients get folded mailing. It's a 8.5 by 11 that's, you know, tri-folded. They get one of those every single month for me. So they may overlap neighborhoods, but they'll get this too, of course, but then they get their own. And I don't try and reinvent the wheel every time. Like, my marketing looks like this for everyone. You know, it's not something that you need to change all the time or change for different pieces. You can copy and paste a lot of it and reuse it on other pieces. So yeah, so like my past clients get something that's very similar to this.
But if it's in a neighborhood that, are you doing all the research just for them specifically, that
No.
maybe they're all the way up on Fort Street?
No, I'm giving them general market statistics.
Okay.
So we have like, I'll go through Douglas County, go through Shelby County, call it good.
Okay.
Any other questions?
That's great.
Nothing?
Hate to admit, but I've been farming two neighborhoods, like Carbone, like neighborhoods.
Yeah.
That would be good for like 3 years.
Okay,
Just realized it's 3 years now.
Yeah.
Time goes so fast. And when I first checked, it was just a handful of random agents.
Yep.
Perfect. But I haven't looked to see how many are rentals. But I've got nothing. I got one from like an outlier. They got it on the.
Interesting, yeah.
Well, I don't know.
It's that way, like, I did Autumn Grove on Q Street, 168th and Q for 6 years, and I had really good luck in there. And then we had a period of probably 3 years-ish, nothing. And then, that's when I decided to pull everything from Douglas. I don't market anything in Douglas anymore, really, anyways. But it was just like one of those things where it was just time to kind of call it wraps. In my opinion, if I was marketing an area for more than probably 18 months and I wasn't seeing anything, I probably would reinvest somewhere else. And then, you could look halfway through. If you're starting to see like, another agent have more prevalent listings in there, then maybe they've kind of beat you to the punch and they've been farming it for a little longer, and it's also time to kind of pull out from there. You also have a lot of agents that live in neighborhoods that you may farm that then try and copy exactly what you said. Because I have that in several neighborhoods actually, but you know what, I'm still seeing successes from it because, my stuff is probably more consistent than theirs.
You
So,
can remove specific
You can.
addresses
Yep.
from your EDDM.
Yep. Yeah, Chris has a good point. Like when you print out your sheet from the EDDM order, you can exclude addresses on there. There are some people that have been asked to be removed, and we write their address every single month on there. But again, once it gets to the post office, it's out of our hands. So, you never know, they can just blank it on. They might still be getting it, yeah.
Just one more thing, so like, Facebook group, you try to like join that neighborhoods group, like, when you live in a neighborhood.
Yep. Yeah,
And then it looks bad if you get caught lying, so
Yeah.
how do you like break into the neighborhoods, like, hey, I want to do a trash, a dumpster day or whatever.
So-
You ever do any of that, you find out.
I was just talking to Sheila Gates about this yesterday. Like one of the services that she's invested in, recommends doing something that's, like several mailings when you get started, where you do more than one a month, like one a week essentially. I've never done that with my mailings. I've not, I don't want to spend the money on that because it's expensive. But that's another approach you could do to maybe like finalize out the neighborhoods, Yeah, where you hit them 5 or 6 times right away, and now is the perfect time of year to do that anyways. You could try that, but again, it's just not something I've ever done.
Every year.
So something else that you could do is start doing open houses, now that the market's changed. Start doing as many open houses as you can in those neighborhoods, because then you become present, they give it a name and a face. And then if you happen to have like a neighborhood newsletter or HOA newsletters, see if you can provide some content that you could get off of our website or realtor.com or something. And at least you're providing something, your name typed in, so they're starting to see your name in multiple places. People that are wanting to live there are starting to see you, then you can provide your newsletter as something you can get to them. I think if you start like what Leslie says, like layer it like that. I think with the market shifting, you're gonna be able to see more of that kind of interaction with prospects.
And the call to action, like
I
your
agree.
QR code and, being specific in what you're wanting the action and the reception from. And that could change too. It doesn't have to be market value. It could be plenty of different things that you think would tie in.
Maybe you have to look at like what you're sending out, maybe you could change something or add something of value on there. And, like a recipe, something that they would have a reason to keep it, and then it sticks in their mind. Just something, sometimes it's just tweaking it.
Besides your mailing, do you do anything else like, okay. I
No,
do the
and-
flags and I've got like 4 listings. I've been doing that for years in the same neighborhood.
Yeah, it's really just, it's kind of like you're peppering those mailings, like they're gonna recognize it, every 4th of July or whatnot, I think that with that, there's one Berkshire agent in particular that lives in West Bay Wood. I used to farm West Bay Wood, and I actually got several listings out of that neighborhood, but he started to take over the neighborhood, so I pulled my marketing back. He does like neighborhood events twice a
He does the
year.
reindeer.
He does reindeer. He does a bunch of stuff. And
Can't confuse
so-
reindeer.
No. And honestly, if you're in a neighborhood, I mean, I think your neighborhood, that's where I started with Glenwood Hills. Like I started in the neighborhood I knew the most. And I could relate, I could be there and I could talk to people, you know, I went door to door on some of those neighborhoods, you know, when I was first getting started. So I think it's important to pick something to start with that you can not only relate to, but you can actually have some sort of presence in as well. Very good points.
So I noticed yours are very data driven. You're not giving out recipes and you're just, and do you
No,
find that that's what people,
That's what they want. I find that that's what most people want. And honestly, I'm never gonna make a recipe from something I got in the mail. No, I don't find it valuable, so I'm just not putting it on there because it's not something I wanna do. To each their own. Like, you know, I think that there's too many social media sites and, you know, people find things like that elsewhere. They can't necessarily find the data that pertains to their neighborhood if they grab their phone and open, you know, Instagram, you know, so.
Yeah, any other questions? Great. Thank you so much, Jonathan.